moment that we stepped inside, the owner opened up the door, there was just straight ahead were mounds and mounds of rubble and dirt where 3 levels of floors and ceilings had fallen down. There were weeds and stinging nettles and trees growing inside.
How were you able to have vision when you saw this rubble? How did it spark your creative imagination to actually save it?
You know, I look back and sometimes I wonder that myself.
Welcome to the PEMcast, conversations and stories for the culturally curious. From the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, I'm Chip Van Dyke.
And I'm Dinah Carden. This is part 3 of our Historic House Crush series.
In this series, we've talked with architects and historians, curators and preservationists, all who have dedicated their professional lives to historic buildings and the stories they tell.
These people are part of a larger community that we at PEM like to refer to as the Crushers.
Crushers are people like Frank Vignone, who blogs about his experience sleeping in historic house museums, or Joel Lefevre, who not only runs a historic house museum in York, Maine, but also lives in a historic home.
At PEM, we have an incredible collection of artworks, but we also are responsible for a number of historic structures, some of which have seen over 300 years of occupants come and go. And there is no shortage of Crushers lining up for each one of our daily house tours.
Today, our story is from perhaps one of the world's most famous historic house crushers. She has hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and she called us from her home in the French Pyrenees.
Just to give you some idea geographically, the chateau is south of Toulouse, about 1.5 hours drive south of Toulouse, and it's almost between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean.
Back in 2011, Karina Waters and her husband Craig were looking for a place to live in the south of France.
We had this idea of just buying this little small village home, maybe, some pale blue shutters close to a boulangerie where you can buy croissants and baguettes.
But they ended up with something else entirely.
You know, we'd driven through mountains and fields of sunflowers and arrived at this little village and went over a little stony bridge and up to the chateau gates, and then behind these beautiful iron gates was this beautiful neoclassical chateau just sitting there amongst sort of fields of flowers.
When they stepped inside, they were stunned by what they saw.
When I looked through the vestibule down towards the rear of the chateau, I could see the sky where the roof had fallen in. I saw a tree on the roof. We were very limited on how far we could walk in because it was, obviously dangerous.
It wasn't all bad news, though. One room, known as the Salon de Musique, was fairly intact.
It's this beautiful gold embellished room with gold leaf with all violins and musical instruments. There was just 3 rooms that were intact, I mean. And the other sort of 91, which I added up on the plans, were really it's just an internal implosion.
94 rooms in all. The Chateau de Gaudin was built in 1745 in the small village of Chateau Verdun. It's a tiny town. We're talking less than 50 people. Many of the people who live there are the descendants of cooks, gardeners, and maids employed at the chateau throughout its long history.
In the 13th century, the property belonged to the Marquis de Sales. The story of this place reads like a retelling of French history. Seized during the French Revolution, pillaged in the mid-19th century, over the last 200 years, several family crests have been raised above the main entrance. When Karina and Craig found it, it had been abandoned and in ruin for nearly 40 years.
Karina, what is your relationship with the locals?
Oh, the locals, it's just fantastic. They are so grateful with wide open arms that the village chateau is back. You know, for them, I remember the first time when we had the Catalonian builders and we had this temporary power connected so they could work at night in winter. And I remember one night I drove up into the driveway and there was a light on in one of the rooms. And when I arrived at the gates, there were all the local villagers who had come to see the chateau lit up at night. For some of them, it was the first time that they had seen lights on at the chateau.
So, okay, what is it like to live there? What's going on today?
Well, right at this moment, I'm sitting inside a historical monument, and I have to say it's a warm, sunny day here. I've just finished tiling the vestibule, which is about 110 square metres. What I love about that is that the stones are really heavy. Like each piece of stone is about 60 kilos. It's really heavy work, and our builder refused to do it because he knew that it was just going to be too hard a job. But we did it in a way that we laughed the whole way through it. It reminded me of a quote from an English philosopher called John Ruskin, and he said that when we build, that we should build forever, and that each stone that we lay will be held sacred just because that we've actually done that with our own hands.
Sounds pretty magical, but Karina explained that it hasn't been all roses. For instance, she doesn't have a visa, so every 3 months she has to return home to Australia, and the troubles beyond that are numerous.
What it is that, there's always this sort of constant red, white and blue tape here. You don't just get the red tape, you get the white and the blue as well. I mean, even just to I bought this old car and I wanted to put it into my name, and I still haven't achieved it. I've been now for 10 goes, because I don't have an invoice in my name because everything's in the chateau name. So I can restore a chateau, but I can't put a car in my name. We have the French government who wants to make it into a hotel, and they'll give us financial assistance if we do. But we have to move forward with our dream, not anyone else's, and not be led by the problems that occur all the time, whether it's from the historic monuments, whether it's from the local plumber who is making life a nightmare or something. That's just how we have to be, and that's what we have to think every day.
What is your dream for the house?
My dream is for the chateau to continue to go forward. I'd like to be the person that sets the foundation for my children and for my descendants, or anyone, whoever it might be, it might not even be my family, whoever it is for the future, that this place is here for a lot longer.
Karina knew that what she had here was very special, and she wanted to share her progress with her family back in Australia.
I started up a Facebook site for the chateau, along with a little blog that I did on WordPress, and I think I had about 50 followers, and then one day I woke up and I had 6,000 followers. I thought my children had been sort of messing around with Facebook, and then Craig said to me, I don't think it's the kids messing around or playing a joke. There's an email from the Huffington Post.
The next day, she had 15,000 followers, and the following day, 30,000. After Vogue got a hold of the story, Karina had no shortage of interest in her project.
One time I was on the train and I heard two Americans talking, and then I heard them say, do you know where the village chateau is? And I said, I know where it is because I'm going up there now. And so they came up, and so they ended up staying for 3 weeks and helping me with the work. And then over this summer, we had many people come to stay. Everyone that has come up to the chateau under those sorts of circumstances has brought so much positivity.
You've got 4 willing workers sitting here plotting to come visit you.
That's how it happens here.
Karina believes in including everyone in the process of bringing the chateau back to life.
We had a restoration workshop this year and last year, and 2 women from our local village joined us to share their grandmothers' and great-grandmothers' recipes when they were the chateau cooks back in the 1800s and up until the 1940s. They cooked 3 local dishes, trout, a rabbit stew, and then a croustade de pomme, which is like an apple pie, all from the original chateau recipes. I feel like as the work and the trust that we have been given to the chateau with the work that we're doing, the respect that we're trying to give, it's almost like that it's emerging itself and that its own spirit has been regained. I know this sounds quite spiritual, but it's hard not to feel that way when you're in a place like this. This is more than just a restoration of a building or of a chateau. Buildings are not just bricks and mortar. They have a history and they have memories, and they're the keepers of these memories. Whatever we endeavour to do in the future, passing on and sharing these memories and the past is really what is important.
How do people find you? You're saying, obviously they can find you at the train station and follow you home, but what are other ways that people can find you?
Oh, well, you just have to type in Chateau Gaudens or Chateau in France. For a little while there, we were coming up as the number 1 chateau in France, but I think now we're below Versailles if you just type into chateau in Google.
If you're interested in supporting Chateau Gaudens, you can visit the Chateau's online boutique where you can find handmade products from the region, including scarves patterned in designs inspired by the Chateau.
We've got our advent calendar up for this year. We have this beautiful Chateau advent calendar that you can put on your mantelpiece. 24 doors that open up with little pictures of the Chateau. But the boutique is just really about just keeping the Chateau sustainable.
Karina, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks, Diana, and thanks, Karen. I appreciate listening, and Whitney, and thank you for everything. My kids think it's so super cool that I'm doing a podcast. They go, Mum, it's super.
Thank you so much.